Welcome to the Solar Activity and Propagation Report number 9 for August 7th, 2014. A little look at what happened in the past week and what we could expect in the next. So, last week we had a solar flux, 150, 160. We had a sunspot, which was, I believe, number 2130. That was expected to flare and it didn't. This week it's kind of the same. Solar flux a little bit down, but we have sunspots 2135, 30, and 2134 that are in possible flare conditions. But like you see, even though we think they're going to flare, we aren't really sure. Our knowledge of the sun isn't that great. It is much better than it was in the past, but we still have, some little holes in our knowledge so we don't know if it flares or not, and so it's just a guess, if we can say. Solar flux steadily came down from about 100, the peak of 160, I would say, to this morning we're at 137. I expected, with the sunspots on the sun right now, to stay at about 120, 130 throughout the next few days. Will it go further down or come back up? Kind of hard to describe. There are quite a few sunspots on the sun, so I don't expect it to dip below 100. But I don't expect, unless there's some new sunspots showing up, I don't expect it to really kind of go really higher than 140, I would say. So it all depends on what happens. Of course, if a flare is sent out by 2132 or 2134 or 35, well, then that could change solar flux a little bit, but for now things are pretty quiet. There was some unsettled conditions. K index hovered at around 3 a few days, and that did make some propagation conditions a little difficult on some signals. One signal that is interesting this year, because it really isn't coming in very well here, and I usually have at least a few days a week that I can listen to it, and it's Radio Thailand. Radio Thailand on 15590 in the evening at 0000 hours isn't coming in this summer, and that is interesting, because with a solar flux of above 100, it should make its way. And I think they almost should have kept 13745, I believe they had, which I think would have propagated better than 15590. But what's interesting is that 15590 doesn't propagate, but when you look at Australia on 17795, there have been a pretty good signal in the past few weeks. So I don't know if it's the way they broadcast, the way they point the antenna or something, but signals aren't very good from Radio Thailand on that frequency. All week, pretty much all week this week, we had KBS World Radio coming in quite well. It's been almost a regular, because when propagation tends to have a little problem, well, signals like KBS World Radio that basically go through the North Pole to come to North America usually are the ones that suffer first. But this summer, KBS World Radio has been there almost every day, showing that geomagnetic conditions, the K index, stayed very low in the past month and a half, which is quite amazing. It went up to 3 this week in a few days, but nothing major. What we expect in the week coming ahead is, unless if there's no flares, then the K index I don't think is going to change much. It should remain at 2, 1, 0. Nothing special making it go higher than 3. I don't think it would go higher than 2 actually. But if there is a flare, then that could change, because flares will send coronal mass ejections towards Earth. So that could change, but since we cannot see in advance if there are flares coming up, it's a little guess here. M-class flare risk is 20%, as you see here. X-class 1%. Sun is very quiet, but it is peppered with sunspots, at least giving us an idea that it is in a minimum of activity. So we are still in that high solar activity from the solar cycle 24 we are in right now. Apart from that, nothing much happening. As you see here, mostly quiet with a chance of flares. I expect signals end of next week to actually come in quite well again. One thing that is interesting is we are starting to notice, I do notice from experience from all the years of radio listening, that we are actually starting to see what I call fall propagation. We are now more than a month past summer solstice, and so days have already started to actually shrink in the northern hemisphere, and we are starting to get a glimpse of what propagation will be this fall. I noticed that there's a change in the signals and the patterns. It's already starting to show up now, as the days are shorter in the north, longer in the south. So it is interesting to see. We also have stronger signals. One signal I monitor from time to time is a Vatican radio on 15570 at 1700 UT. And the strong hours of summer, daylight hours in June and July, that signal is rather weak over here. In the past week and a half, signals from east-west direction, Vatican radio, Radio France 15300, BBC Ascension, that's more of a southerly, but these signals have been a little stronger than usual. Kuwait has been pretty much a good one at 15540, also from 18 to 21. So we see changes in propagation. It is interesting to note. So go and take a peek. Remember the websites, dx.qsl.net for solar indices, solarham.net for lots of information on what's happening on the sun, and of course spaceweather.com, another website where you can check for the latest news and what's happening with the sun and other types of news, including here the historic comet rendezvous from Rosetta probe. So hope you enjoy, and 73.